Welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Season 8, presented by Celonis. I'm Michael LeBlanc.
And I'm Steve Dennis.
We're kicking off our brand new season from the big show in the Big Apple with a very special guest, veteran retailer turned tech solution provider, Carrie Tharp, Vice President, Strategic Industries, Google Cloud.
Well, I've known of Carrie for a long, long time, and it turns out we live in the same city, yet we've never met in person. But it's been great to get her on the pod. She's got a great retail background at some Dallas-based retailers like Fossil and Neiman Marcus, and now is at Google Cloud. So
our NRF experience started here actually on Friday. As some of the listeners might remember, we were finalists in the VIP Vendors and Partnerships Award, and we're thrilled to announce we won.
We did indeed. Yes, actually, my daughter, after I texted her, one of my daughters, when I texted her that we won, she said, and the crowd goes wild. But she did not have the sound effects to go with it.
Well, special thanks to you, my friend. Appreciate you and great partnership putting our pod together. And a special thanks to our amazing guests, the judges, of course, the VIP awards, and you, the listeners, for being part of our little podcasting adventure here. So we're very excited.
Maybe it's good that we take our own advice asking people to try stuff, because this was very much why don't we give this a try? And it turned out it keeps on going. So, and we were in competition with our friends Ricardo and Casey and their podcast, and then Greg Busek at IHL. So
tough competition.
Great competition.
Tough competition.
It was nice to see them, and it was a nice honor.
Yeah, it was a great event, too. Lots of our friends, lots of industry colleagues, lots of great... Congratulations to all the winners and all the finalists, too, because it was a great group.
Everyone's a winner, I hear.
Everyone's a winner.
Just to be nominated.
Exactly.
Recognition enough.
We're a little extra bit of a winner, I guess. Now, this is the first, our interview with Carrie, this is the first of several interviews in and around the big show. We're recording this on Saturday. So lots of people to meet, stuff to see, gossip to share over the next couple of episodes. So we've got a lot of NRF to go. Now, I saw just before you came here, you were in another studio recording, I think, the audio version of the book, right?
Yeah, I've gotten some questions actually from people around about whether my new book, Leaders Leap, would have an audio book as well as an ebook, because right now you can just pre-order the hardcover version of it. More about that in a second. Yeah, I was in the studio going through the arduous process of recording the audio books. So
now, are you better at that after doing, what,
am I better
150
at that than podcasts?
Well, no, I was going to say, are you better at that now that you've done 150 episodes of the podcast? You know, before and after, are you better, worse, the same?
Probably better. Also, my producer of the audiobook is very good at giving me coaching, and there's just a lot to not make so many mistakes. Of course, reading a book, you got to be much more precise. And I also discovered that I chose to include certain words that I'm not very good at actually pronouncing, like vulnerability and digital disruption. And so, there's many takes. But anyway, it's all done and about to be mastered and all that stuff that you understand that I don't really. And we send it up to the fine folks at Audible, and that'll eventually be on the various websites. So.
Fantastic. Now, the book comes out in March, but there's pre-order offers, or pre-order right now, right?
Yeah, I was going to mention folks can pre-order the book. We're actually running a bit of a promotion to encourage people to pre-order, and it's a little bit too difficult to explain verbally, so we'll put some of it in the show notes, as well as I will have posted it on social media by the time people can listen to this. But essentially, if you buy a copy of the book, you email us the receipt, you'll get some downloadable content, you'll get invited to a virtual pre-launch event, and then also if you buy more copies, there's some extra special sort of things. So look for that on LinkedIn and look for that in the show notes.
I don't think we've mentioned the name of the book and when it actually launches. Just give us a
Sure, real quickly. Leaders Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption is the book. It's really about the imperative for many, many companies to accelerate their pace of change, to transform, to keep pace with the speed of disruption. I make that argument. I make the argument, though, also that despite many people believing that or knowing that or feeling that, most transformations fail. And so really the heart of the book is what to do about it from a leadership perspective. Lots of retail examples, but it is not a retail book. It is a broader leadership book. So that's what it's about. It's out March 12th in most countries,
Excellent.
a bit later in some of the European countries for reasons I don't understand.
It's a metric system, I think. It has to do with the
metric system.
All right, well, let's get the news, I guess not of the week. We've been off for a couple of weeks. Let's talk about holiday. I mean, I was walking around New York City today. The stores were rammed, just very full. I've been talking to retailers who've been telling me that their sales are up, down, and sideways a little bit because of the weather, weirdness in the weather, particularly those folks trying to sell seasonal stuff. It's 15 degrees Celsius today here in New York City.
Canadian for American
Speaking of the metric system, what's that, 70 or whatever? What is that?
I don't even know.
I don't know. Anyway, it was warmer than it should be.
It is less than 70, though.
It was warmer than it should be here in New York City for January. But what make of you the numbers from holiday? Here they were okay.
Well, yeah, I feel we're... I kind of wondered whether it was worth talking about on this episode because now we're several weeks past, the Christmas holidays, and a lot of the news has been out. I would say, the overall conclusion. I mean, one report said that sales were up about 3%, which was the low end of the range that people have been listening for a while. We talked about kind of the range of different forecasts. So that was definitely at the low end of the range. But to your point, it's a pretty mixed picture. We'll talk about some real outliers in a second. I feel like now, really, the question is how profitable was it, right? So sales-wise, not bad. Profit-wise, hard to say. I mean, a lot of anecdotal evidence that it was pretty promotional, but I feel like that's what people say every year. So it'll be another few weeks before we start to get earnings reports. But yeah, you definitely have some extremes. So the other thing I was going to mention is shortly after the holiday, so just about a week ago, I guess, pretty much I think on the same day or within about a 36-hour period, American Eagle, Abercrombie and Fitch, and Lululemon all came out and updated their guidance and basically said, we had such a strong holiday that we're going to let you know that we expect the quarter to be quite a bit better. And, and it's interesting because at least on the Lululemon side, there have been a lot of issues in the more premium, kind of discretionary side of the world. And so that clearly doesn't seem to be affecting them very much. And then as much as apparel has been kind of a tough category, to have both American Eagle and A&F come in and say their sales were really strong, it's very clear that general merchandise and apparel in total had a pretty weak holiday. So there's really this, I hate to say bifurcation. But, pretty clear, I think, winners and losers. So again, we'll see when we get the earnings exactly how that translated to the bottom line. But from a sales perspective, it seems like a pretty wide range of outcomes.
Update upwards. And I was also reading the news about Aritzia, who had said that it was a bit soft, but that wasn't stopping their opening of new stores. I think they were still planning 8 stores in America. So they're like, listen, it was a little soft, but we were confident. So they expressed certainly some confidence, and I happen to be dressed pretty much head to toe in Lululemon, so I can attest to the fact around our house that it was a big Lululemon event. Now, let's talk about on the other side, and we've had a couple of guests on, and we're here at the show. I remember it was 2019. The big story was Showfields, right? Everybody, I think he told me
the world's most interesting store or something.
Talis V, great guy. I mean, he had an interesting idea, and I think he did like 19 stores. It was the thing. Everybody wanted to go see the new store.
Yeah.
A little less positive news, or a lot less positive news this week.
Yeah, well, we talked about, several months ago that they had closed 2 of their locations, and we're trying to, kind of figure out. But they just announced a few days ago they're shutting down completely. So that's not a happy outcome.
Yeah.
And so they were sort of positioned as this kind of newer department store, really totally new kind of retail concept. And then the other...
And the model was that they were the enabler for DTC brands to connect physically too.
Yes, right. And we've had my Neighborhood Goods founder, Matt Alexander. They also announced that they're closing 2 of their 4 stores. So their original location in Plano, Texas, and then I think it was the 3rd store they opened, which was in Austin.
Yeah.
So they're keeping open the Chelsea Market store here in New York, and then their store out in California. But these 2 very, I think they pretty much opened more or less around the same time. They were supposed to be reinventing the space, being an enabler, as you said, for some of these digitally native vertical brands are not in such a happy place. I guess I would say quickly on it, I think it was always to me a pretty tough model. One is this idea of being a new department store. They're most decidedly not department stores, if only because they don't have departments.
Right.
Not to be such a literalist about it.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was an unusual strategy just to say, like, people, generally speaking, aren't in love with department stores, so they're not necessarily looking for a new one. So I thought it was just interesting market positioning. But I think the bigger challenge is just when you have this changing mix of offering, it's hard to know, other than the customer that really likes seeing the newest stuff. But if you go there one time and it's kids' jeans, and the next time it's, artisan pottery, it's hard to, I think, build that brand. At least at a scale, and we're talking about some high dollar real estate.
Let's talk about. By the way, do you know who the talk about coincidence on the show? We've got somebody from Google. Whose neighborhood's good landlord in Chelsea markets? Google.
Is it really?
Yeah, they own that building. Anyway,
I didn't realize that.
Little fun factoid for people that maybe they don't care about. Speaking of fun factoids, the buzz around this Quencher and the Stanley coffee cup. I mean, it must have brand owners buying cars to set on fire. So
I've only recently learned about the ludicrously capacious.
Nice words.
Well, that was a little Succession Easter egg there. No, I didn't really know much. I mean, I sort of heard about it, but one of my kids was like, "Hey, you're supposedly a retail expert. What do you think of this Stanley Cup thing?" And I'm like, "Well, I think it would be nice if a Canadian team ever won it again." But
Go Leafs.
And she's like, "No, like no, that's not what it is." And so she shared some facts, which is that it's gone from, let's see, what are the numbers here? 74 million in 2019 to 750 million.
Unbelievable.
This past year. And they just did this big thing at Target, which that was kind of the things that really got them in the news. So maybe they're on their way to $1 billion in sales. What I thought was particularly interesting, which I also had not realized, is that we had Michelle Poole from Crocs, president of Crocs, on the podcast a couple of years ago. The guy that is behind the growth of the Stanley Cup came from Crocs, and he basically took some of the playbook that helped revitalize the Crocs brand over the last few years and apply it to this cup. So yeah, I don't. It's definitely remarkable. I definitely don't really understand it though. So we'll see if it's just a fad or something that they're able to keep going. Hopefully they can.
Well, I shout out to those folks because my wife got one for Christmas from my daughter, and I'm seeing a lot more of my wife because she makes about 10 trips to the washroom because she's drinking a gallon of the water. So
it's good.
I like
hydrated.
it. She's staying hydrated, and I get to see her a lot because she's back and forth to the washroom a fair bit. Let's wrap up with store openings. So we've got some numbers on store openings. Once again, lending credence to the nonsense. Does that make sense? Of
validating the utter nonsense of the retail apocalypse.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's, I just saw that because our friends at Coresight, Deb Weinswig, who we saw at the awards ceremony as well, put out their store closings, store opening report, end of the year for the U.S., 5,500 store openings, which is historically a very large number. So clearly, physical retail isn't dead. No one's more surprised than me. But also, it was interesting, just some of the conversations I've had in the past 24 hours about, at the Retail ROI event, for example, I think it was the CIO at Carter's, the kidswear brand, which is primarily wholesale, but they're opening 100 new stores this
100?
year. Yeah.
Wow.
So, when you just go through, obviously, the dollar stores and Lululemon and all these kinds of things, but just so many.
I mean, the dollar stores are probably about half that number, give or take, right? Yeah. I mean.
So it's just interesting that not only do you see a pretty large number, and yes, there is a big concentration, among a few kinds of retailers, largely in the discount side, but, IKEA is opening new stores. Like, you can really go through some fairly mature brands that are investing pretty heavily in stores. So, we'll see how well those plans play out. But big year for store openings.
Well, it's going to be an interesting year for sure. We're going to be with you here all year round with the Remarkable Retail Podcast. So that's a wrap on the news of the week for now. Let's hear a few words from our brand new presenting sponsor for Season 8, Celonis. Want to ramp up speed and productivity for your entire retail operation? In the Celonis Process Mining for Dummies Handbook, we show you how Celonis process mining technology, enhanced with process intelligent AI, can help you streamline performance across your entire retail business so you can drive lasting value from end to end. That means purchasing, supply chain, omni-channel execution, merchandising, and customer service processes, all managed and optimized through one powerful software solution. To get your free copy of Process Mining for Dummies and see how it's generated millions in value for brands around the world like Aldi, Globus, and Edeka, head to Celonis.com/remarkable retail.
Well, Carrie Tharp, welcome to the Remarkable Retail Podcast, our season opening episode. How are you, and where do we find you today?
I am great. Excited to be here from Dallas, Texas.
Well, you're actually just down the road from me, perhaps. So we could, who knows, we could have done this live and patched Michael in. But in any event, we're delighted to have you here. And there's really a lot to talk about. One of the things, aside from kind of the center of our discussion today, is you bring a really diverse set of experiences to bear, having started way back when, I guess, at Bain and Company, then several senior roles at major retailers, including a brand that we both share some common background, and now at Google. So could you just maybe give us a sense of how your career has evolved and how you ended up in Google, and then, a little bit about what you are doing today?
Yeah, happy to. It's funny. I wouldn't say that I started out with a master plan, but it's worked out really well. I actually started in technology back during the dot-com bust. So, perfect time to come out of college, writing code for a couple different companies here in Dallas. And I learned very quickly that I was not interested in writing code 9 to 5, but I really enjoyed the intersection of technology, data, and consumer. And so I very quickly kind of pivoted into this career of doing customer-centric, data-driven transformations. And so that was really the story of all of my experiences at different brands like Neiman Marcus, Fossil Group, Travelocity, all consumer-driven brands that needed to modernize and evolve how they interacted with customers and drive new experiences. And so really enjoyed doing that at several different places and different categories, different kind of brand altitudes, if you will. And then, doing these transformations, you find that it always takes longer and it's harder than you want it to be. And you don't always have the technology or the platforms you need to get to where you want to go. And that was really my transition to Google. I thought, why don't I go somewhere and drive the roadmap itself that I want and need as a retail/consumer executive and help drive transformation at scale. So instead of one brand at a time, be able to do it kind of from the center at Google. And so that was the evolution, and haven't looked back since. We've brought a lot of products to market that I'm just thrilled to interact with my retail friends and peers and bring new experiences to market.
So let me pull on that thread a little bit. Sometimes retail is called the accidental career. It seems like the through line for you has been technology. Did you imagine yourself on the other side of the table, so to speak, in a technology? Was that your kind of, you were in the consulting side, but did you see yourself moving from retail to technology? Like, what prompted that move from, I don't know, would we call it the client side to the agency side? What was it, the love of technology and the knowledge to help?
Yeah, it's funny. So I wouldn't say it was planned. As you look at my last couple of experiences, I loved retail. I loved owning a P&L. You've probably had past guests talk about retails in the detail and really that trading of the business on a day-to-day. And I'll be honest, I miss that. Looking at the flash every 15 minutes during peak and really making sure you're pushing the business as you can. But it came down to that moment. And, I actually didn't leave retail thinking I would leave forever. I'll probably be back. But really thought, hey, this would be a unique opportunity for me to sit on that other side of the house. I saw a gap in understanding on the technology side of the actual business dynamic. So if you think about Google or any technology player, they have an intellectual understanding of what's going on in your business, but they've not owned the buy. They've not managed that P&L. And so they don't necessarily understand the trade-offs that are happening in these decision makers inside the industry. And so I thought, as I was reached out to this role, I thought, I don't know if I'm interested in that. I love what I'm doing. But it was an opportunity to help bridge that gap between the technology provider and the industry, and really kind of put industry challenges into Google speak in this case to help them create better products that would be more effective for the industry.
Well, talk to us in Google speak for a bit. Tell us about, sometimes when we have guests on, we say, tell us about your company, but I think everybody knows a lot about Google, but probably not enough about Google Cloud. And then in particular, the retail vertical and what expertise and position you bring in that regard.
Yeah. So, I think 10 plus years ago when I started doing cloud migrations, cloud was about cheaper infrastructure. It was about disaster recovery and outsourcing for cost reduction. And you really didn't look to a cloud provider to do much more than that. And really what Google Cloud is about is helping drive the innovation roadmaps of the companies that we work with, whether that's in retail and consumer, in banking, in telco, across all these different industries. Because what we're really known for is our strength in data and analytics and AI and machine learning. So if you step back from Google at large, all of Alphabet, and you think of all the different properties that have 1 billion plus users interacting with them, whether that's search, YouTube, Google Play, we understand how to take interactions at scale and continuously innovate and bring new experiences that are compelling to folks. And so we take and harness all of that innovation that's going on in use of data, and then funnel it into products and solutions that we release from Google Cloud. So one of those examples, the first thing that we started working on when I got here was, for years, retail had begged Google to allow retailers to have Google quality search on their own websites. We've all been there. We've all had horrible search experiences, not for lack of trying, by every retailer with a really large catalog. And, Google had tried a couple of times over the years to create something, but not really kind of leveraging the full technology stack. So Cloud came in and said, let's harness all of the power that makes Google search a really amazing technology. It has that natural language understanding. It understands what you're looking for, perhaps before you even do, and apply that directly to a retailer's site. And so we launched that product a couple of years ago. Macy's was one of our first customers, multi-brand, multi-category type dynamics. Lowe's was another initial build customer. You can imagine the complexity of the search that people put into that online environment.
Lots of widgets.
Products. Yeah. And very quickly they saw increases in revenue per visit, increases in conversion. And then what you get with that, and what makes the magic of Google Cloud and what we do in the retail space, is this continuous improvement roadmap. So if you used to build your own proprietary search capability, you had to put your own resources to keeping that fresh and evolving that experience. And so now we build these products and solutions that continue to improve. So part of what we're announcing at NRF as an example is our search capability is now large language model infused. And so kind of plussing up what was already really great retail search capabilities with generative AI and language models to get those responses even better and get those customers to what they're looking for even faster, more relevant. So in this case, we're using the language models to drive improved relevancy. You may have said X, but really understanding you as a person, your past search behavior, your past transactions, the dynamics of customers who interact with your brand, you might really be looking for Y. And so starting to reduce those gaps in both digital and physical experiences. So to kind of draw a line through all of that, retail for Google Cloud is one of our biggest industries that we focus on. As you can imagine, our customers come to us to help stitch together all the different experiences that you can touch upon across Alphabet and create new, unique journeys. And so we're very leaned in on innovating in this space, and we find retail to be, it's a classic test and learn industry. So willing to kind of try and dabble with new technologies on that journey to create the next breakthrough experience.
So if size and scale are kind of table stakes in your industry, when you're in front of prospective retail clients with your competitors, your counterparts? What's the is that the differentiator as you see it, why people choose to work with you? There's a larger suite, and then you can leverage that search capability in and around cloud. Is that what you consider your differentiator, your key differentiator?
Yeah, I would say it's a little bit of having that portfolio that is industry specific and tuned specifically to the challenges that the industry has. But then it's also approaching the technology in a way that maps to how retail needs to be operating their technology roadmap. So making sure that we build solutions in a way that I call it a better answer inside. So rather than asking a retailer to reform their entire MarTech stack or e-com stack, we're focused on building AI and machine learning that plugs in to that core system stack process that you have and allows you to move that transformation roadmap that you have faster. So I think, when I was at a couple of retailers before, I had capital roadmaps that, were 3 times bigger than we could consume in a year. And, I had boards that were looking for business performance improvement in year. And so Google Cloud is very focused on helping you deliver those business outcomes. It's not tech for tech's sake. And so we are kind of the preeminent player in the space that has this track record of doing AI-based innovation that you can feel it in the flash, you can see it in the P&L and in the customer experience. So I think that's really where we get organic interest from retail is, we've done this, we can handle data and technology at scale, but we also have these really differentiated capabilities to bring to bear in your business.
So, Carrie, there's obviously a lot we could talk about today, but it's pretty hard to have a conversation about what's going on in retail without talking about AI, I guess in particular, generative AI. We understand that you've done a survey about AI and retail. I'm curious if you could maybe just kind of share some of the key highlights as to what retailers are doing, thinking, and prioritizing.
Great. Yeah. So we did a survey of hundreds of decision makers in this space. And, what we always talk about with technology is this bright, shiny object, or is this really a thing? And when do I need to dip my toe into these different technologies that are coming out? And so what we saw in this survey was that 81% of these decision makers saw an urgency to adopt in 2024. And 72% said they do plan to deploy generative AI in this year because 95% of them see it as changing experiences. So I would 100% agree with those takeaways from decision makers. But then we wanted to double click on what use cases are you focused on? There are things in generative AI that are really expansive, fundamental experience change that are pretty complex that you could see taking some time to build in. And then there's other things that really you're going to be able to notice a difference in your business this year. And so what these decision makers came back with is, a couple, I would call them usual suspects. If you understand what language models and generative can be used for, came back with several very practical focus areas. So starting off with customer service modernization, 59% of those in the survey said that's where they'll be starting in 2024. So automating a lot of those back and forth interactions that today, usually don't surprise and delight the customer, can lead to more frustration or to extra phone calls. And so using language models to really understand, bring more data sources together to streamline those interactions. Next is product descriptions. So this is one, if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me for this solution a couple of years ago, pre-generative, I'd be a wealthy person. But this is, a very practical practitioner's area to start. So we all know that metadata, product data, product descriptions that you need to put on site can be a real hindrance in retail. You might not have enough information, you might not have quality information, and it changes the quality of your recommendations capabilities. And so being able to now use vision and generative capabilities to generate those actual product descriptions and metadata allows people to get things to web faster, allows better AI operating around it on things like recommendations. So that's another exciting space. And then other big themes were creative assistance, conversational commerce, and store associate support. So a big theme, we've got a lot of associates and cost and complexity locked up in the store environment. And so helping those associates free themselves up from kind of mundane work, not understanding what tasks to do next, not having their tasks optimized, using AI to now drive kind of store productivity, optimization, training is a big use case. So those are areas that, if you're not thinking about as a leader in retail, it's definitely that moment to start checking it out. I would say that the models and the capabilities have gotten to the fidelity level where these things are viable in 2024. So we're already doing a lot of work along these themes with big retail players like Kroger or the Home Depot, touching on these key P&L drivers.
It's really interesting. I'm wondering as a general strategy whether you would recommend kind of a portfolio approach where you've got a set of things which have a very clear path or relatively clear path to ROI, and then things that perhaps a more exploratory or kind of test and learn environment because maybe the payback isn't quite there, but that helps retailers understand different use cases and just kind of advance their longer term technology strategy.
Yes, that is absolutely the approach I recommend. I think, Steve, you probably had the same experience as me in the past where I had to fund my own innovation journey. And so if you can take some of these low-hanging fruit, really practical operational use cases like the customer service modernization, the product descriptions, and kind of bank your ROI there while you're testing and learning on the immersive, what is the future of conversational commerce for your brand, then that allows you to fund that journey, give you the time to be learning the full kind of expansiveness of the technology and releasing those types of things as you go through the year. So I find that most compelling to boards and others that are trying to understand how do you get the ROI on this technology. And so it's great to go through those quick wins first.
Yeah, it's a great perspective. Now let's talk about one of the retailers you're working with. You're making some announcements of someone who does get it and is working with you. Victoria's Secret, what are you doing with them?
Yeah, thrilled to be working with Victoria's Secret. This is a storied brand that is thinking about evolving personalized and inclusive shopping experiences and closing their physical and digital divide. So they're really looking at touching a whole host of these use cases, many that we just talked about. So first, having a conversational assistant. You guys may not be aware, but buying a lot of this intimate apparel is complicated. You may have favorites that you bought from them years ago. And if you go into a store today, you can get an associate to quickly tell you, where's the most similar bra to that, or, they still carry that. And really creating a conversational assistant online that can help you, regardless of what you're looking for, provide the best recommendations using our vision search capabilities to say, hey, here's an item I bought, some time ago. I'd like to replenish that. And really just creating something that's more frictionless online. And then also using it across their back office. So they're looking at this in the marketing space to do sentiment understanding, supply chain forecasting. So to make sure they have the right product in the right place at the right time, continuously improving on those retail fundamentals. Things like the store associates. So they're looking at using this for onboarding and training for their store-based associates. And then, of course, we mentioned search earlier. So using Google quality search in their online experience. So really a whole host of things with that mix, Steve, that you were mentioning of some operational improvement while they continue to evolve this inclusive kind of conversational shopping experience they'll be bringing to online.
So maybe take a slight tangent. I know we don't have much of your time left, so be careful not to make this question too broad. But one of the things we're really going to be focusing on this season is broader kind of leadership trends, particularly around how to get transformational efforts to really aim higher, move faster, as the pace of technology disruption, consumer preferences change. Given the different roles you've had, given how you are playing a key role, have played key roles in driving transformation, but also obviously you're doing that through your work at Google, would there be any general advice you would have to retailers to be able to move faster or make the kind of changes, take the kind of risks they should?
Yeah, so I think the one thing that remains true, no matter the pace of innovation feels like it's accelerating, we're kind of at this new pivot point with generative AI that's akin to the beginning of e-commerce. And you can really get swept up into tech for tech's sake and let it be a hammer looking for a nail. And, you really have to pause and not let that happen, because at the end of the day, none of these technologies solve for if you have underlying brand challenges or brand value prop. And really thinking about tech as the enabler, not the destination to that journey, and looking at everything you put on that roadmap. What is it doing for me? Is it one of these low-hanging fruit ROI drivers that we're just going to bank? Is this a higher risk kind of immersive experience that might fail? I think we all have experiences in our career of something on our test and learn agenda that was kind of dead on arrival, whether it was an e-com feature function or something we tried out in a store, but really saying how do all these things ladder up? And so when we talk about AI and generative AI, this is really a team sport. And so kind of any cracks you have in team dynamics about working across different teams, across marketing, across merchants, across the technology team, this is really that moment to think about your people, process, and functions, because you really need everybody kind of in that same rowboat rowing in the same direction to be able to accelerate. Digital for years, and I think, Steve, you've talked about this in your own past, has created winners and losers. And generative AI is going to create another kind of fault line or disruption where you see certain players continue to accelerate while others fall behind. And so creating that plan and roadmap in your mind, then applying the technology to it is really what's important for leaders. And then figuring out how to pull all those different functions and stakeholders together is more important than ever. We're finding in generative, as an example, that it's not just the data scientists at play here. Don't relegate this to an IT or a data science conversation. We're specifically seeing unique skill sets like UX and UI designers or merchants or merchant planners come into these discussions on these use cases and experiences and really move the needle because they look at it from a different perspective than a technologist. So how do you kind of get those teams and processes together if you haven't over the last couple of years to really be in the best position to catch this technology and make it your own and create your kind of remarkable retail experience of the future?
It's great advice. You got a big presence at NRF, and you're going to be talking to many of your counterparts and former counterparts as one of us, so to speak. Any last words of advice when you're one-to-one in those meetings with people who you used to do their job over and above everything, the great advice you've already given us? Any one thing you might add to folks who are listening today?
Yeah, I would say we are still just at the beginning of this journey. So those of us that have been doing kind of retail technology for a while, it seems like we've seen so much. But at the end of the day, the fundamentals, like I said, like this is still inherently a data problem and understanding your consumer and, making the best of that understanding and creating proprietary experiences. And so this is a moment where technology can make folks uncomfortable. I've even had CIOs say, hey, I really haven't used the generative capabilities myself. And I would tell you, don't be shy. There is no dumb question. Get, hands on your own keyboard, use this technology embedded. It's embedded to our Google Workspace suite. So in all of your document creation and PowerPoints, and just get your feet wet, because then it expands your mind to the opportunities of how you can apply it to your business. So, don't be a late adopter. Try it on for size yourself.
Well, fantastic advice. Now, how do people get in touch with you? Are you a LinkedIn person? I'm sure they can find Google. They can search for you, of course. But are you a LinkedIn person?
Search. I hear that's going to be big. I
hear it could be something.
Absolutely. I am on LinkedIn, very active there. I like to share things that are going on in our business and happy to connect with anybody there. And then if you just want to stay up on what's happening, there's so many acronyms and names and model names and Llama and Gemini and all these things we have going on. Check out cloud.google.com. You can see the blogs and research and insights coming from the brain trust of Google, and just kind of keep up with what's on the move.
Well, listen, fantastic. Carrie, thanks so much for joining Steve and I on our premiere release episode for Season 8. It was a real treat to get to know you and get your perspectives. I wish you much continued success in your career and at Google Cloud. And once again, thanks so much for joining us on the pod.
Of course. Enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
Well, great interview with Carrie. And you and I were saying for Season 8, we wanted to kind of wrap the show with a few thoughts we had on the interview that we did. We thought that would be a good way to wrap the interview. I mean, it's so fascinating, right? Because the big three are all making play into retail, but it's interesting how they're, table stakes versus differentiators. Google, you think of search, they're all very big, all very powerful companies, but they're carving out their own niche. And I think Google is one to watch in the cloud space for sure, the way they're positioning for 2024 and beyond. Yeah,
and I think just the, we don't have that many, I was kind of reflecting on this, we don't really have that many tech vendors on, we tend to be more focused on having retailers on, or, maybe more of a general thought leader that's got perspective. But I think when you're a company like Google, not only do you have this great history, obviously, in search people are known for, but just all the conversations, that's what I guess I sort of reflected on was all the conversations that she and her team get to have across a whole range of different companies, and then to be able to leverage that with their other expertise. Like, it really puts them in a really interesting position. The other thing I noted was, just some of her comments around innovation. And, one of the things I say in Remarkable Retail, and I kind of talk about a little bit in my new book, is this idea that innovation is really a contact sport. I think she talked about it's like kind of taking a village. But, it is really a inherently messy process if you're going to do anything interesting. And again, I think when you have that kind of scale that they do, they can try a bunch of different things, have this real portfolio approach, which not everybody, I think it's good to think about that portfolio approach to innovation in general, because you got to try some stuff that have, probably not that great chance of working. And then you also got to have, I hate to use the sort of tiresome sports metaphors, but, singles, doubles, triples, and then hopefully the occasional home run, grand slam, whatever. But,
and Google, it's funny to continue that metaphor. Google kind of starts on third base a little bit because, they're well established, they're not new to the retail space, and they've hired such a retail expert. They have the means to bring people like Carrie in. Right?
Yeah, no, it's good to be king, right? It's like, it's and sometimes I'm actually a little hesitant to use some of the examples that I do. Whether we're talking about Amazon or Salesforce or Google or some of these big companies with enormous resources. They clearly do have the ability to spend money and take certain risks that make way smaller. So I'm sensitive to that. It's not necessarily that doesn't necessarily resonate with smaller companies or companies without those budgets. But it's a powerful place to be, and there's a little bit of everybody out for a pass on some of this stuff too. And we'll see where it lands.
All right. Well, it was a great interview, and let's leave the episode there. Thanks for tuning in. New episodes of Season 8, presented by Celonis, will show up each and every Tuesday. And be sure and tell your friends and colleagues in the retail industry all about us.
I'm Steve Dennis, author of the best-selling book, Remarkable Retail, and my new forthcoming book, Leader's Leap, Transforming Your Company at the Speed of Disruption, which will be published in March and is available for pre-order at booksellers everywhere. You can learn more about me, my consulting, and keynote speaking at stephenpdennis.com.
And I'm Michael LeBlanc, consumer retail growth consultant, keynote speaker, and producer and host of a series of retail trade podcasts, including this one. You can learn more about me on LinkedIn, and you can catch up with both of us next in person at Shop Talk in Las Vegas this March. Safe travels, everyone.
She's brought a ludicrously capacious bag. What's even in there, huh? Flat shoes for the subway? Her lunch pail? Greg, it's monstrous. It's gargantuan. You could take it camping. You could slide it across the floor after a bank job.